Hey, Rick. Hey, Rick. This is Ron.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Rick.
Dr. Morris, we're going to give Andy and Mr. Stevens and Ms. Burns a little bit of time to get in.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, Mr. Smith's on the line.
Okay. Hey, Andy.
Hey, Ron.
Well, it's 4:01. Franny, correct me if I'm wrong, but a quorum is 3, correct? Franny?
Correct. 3 people.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just received the number. I don't know whether the other board members received the number. I just received it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have John and Paige try to track down Mr. Colonel Leaks and Ms. Burgess. Well, let's go ahead and get to call. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and then so I'm going to call the executive committee meeting to order for June 2nd, 2020. In attendance, Paige, are we taping?
We are, yes, sir.
Okay. In attendance so far, we have Ron Anderson, Robert Morris, Andy Smith. Staff, we have Paige Jernigan, Franny, John Ando, and then we have, for legal, we have Franny Heiser and Rick Morgan. Anybody else on the call?
It's Pam Baker.
Did you call my name?
Ms. Pam Baker. No.
John. Leaks. I've been on there all the time. You call me? Did you miss me?
No, I didn't. I didn't know. We didn't realize you were on the call.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm glad to switch up, Colonel Leaks. Okay. I'm going to give Paige and John a second to try to track down Ms. Burgess.
Okay.
Since one of the agenda items is his. But we can go ahead and start with, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I moved.
Second.
Motion from Andy. I have a second from Dr. Morris. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate by your vote by saying yay or nay when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Morris,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Leak.
Yes.
Okay, the agenda carries. Next up is adopt the minutes from March 11th, 2020 meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Colonel Leak. Can I get a second?
A second.
A second from Dr. Morris. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate your vote by saying yea or nay when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Morris,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Leak. Colonel Leak.
Going straight to voicemail. I've got somebody on the line.
Colonel Leak. Colonel Leak, are you there?
Hold on. I can't get. Hold on. Do you hear me?
Okay, we got Miss Burgess.
All right, I'm in.
Hey, Miss Burgess. Hey, how are
Can you
you?
hear me?
Oh, Colonel Leak. Oh, there's Colonel. Okay. Well, it sounds like Colonel Leak just hung up. Miss Burgess,
Mr. Chair.
we were. Yes, sir.
Before he hung up, did you hear him say, can you hear me?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, I heard him on my phone saying, can you hear me?
Okay. Okay. So, well, we were in the middle of voting on adopting the minutes. Ms. Burgess, yay or nay on adopting the minutes?
Nay.
Excuse me?
Nay.
One more time. I didn't understand what you said.
I said no. So we've already
You
approved
vote
the
no?
agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on, Miss. Hold
Chair,
on.
already
Yeah.
approved the agenda.
I'm back.
Yes, sir. We'll get to
Hello?
you in a second, Colonel Lee. Yes, we hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
Colonel Lee? Okay. Okay. Ms. Burgess, you had a question?
Well, have we already adopted the agenda?
Yes, sir.
I see. I clocked in before 1 and was sitting there listening to music and had to call Mr. Leach before I was let in. And he got
Okay.
knocked off. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, the agenda's been adopted, and we've adopted the agenda, and we're currently voting on whether to accept the minutes from the March 11th, 2020 meeting. So, Colonel Lee, yay or nay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Ms. Burgess, yay or nay on the minutes?
Nay.
I'm sorry, what?
No.
Okay, and you vote no. Okay, the motion passes. The next one up is matters referred from the Board of Directors. Mr. Ando.
The only matter that's referred to the executive committee is to discuss the requirement of 150 or more full-time equivalent bus operators in a union environment within the last 8 years in key personnel, and that's for discussion today.
Okay. So that's actually item 6. Franny and John. So Mr. Burgess, you had made a motion at the last board meeting, which we forwarded over to the executive committee, to remove the requirement of the RFP of 150 more full-time equivalent bus operators in a union environment from the key personnel. So that's what that's what's up now. So Franny
But Mr.
and
Chair,
John.
it shouldn't
Yes,
be
sir.
a discussion. It should be a vote, whether to pass or not pass. More discussion on that motion.
No,
Remember,
sir.
that motion
When
is
we made
already passed. It's matter now whether executive committee confirm it or say nay.
I don't think we
What do you
passed
mean
the
by that?
motion.
Well, we can't. So because you brought it up in the motion period, we could take no action other than to send it to a committee. So it was sent to the executive committee, and that was what the motion was.
And
now we're at the executive-
now it's time for the executive committee to vote on it.
Well, I think
And
a motion has to be presented to the executive committee to vote on.
Yes.
all right, well,
You understand, Mr. Burke?
okay. But that motion is written on the agenda.
Okay. So you would have to make a motion according to Robert's Rules of Order. You have to make a motion for us to vote on it.
All right, so move.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Burgess and a second from Dr. Morris. Okay, so I'm going to let, for discussion, I would like to hear what Franny and John have to say and Pam have to say about this subject.
Pam, do you want to go ahead and start, or do you want me to?
Well, I can start with just one clarifying point. We cannot change the RFP. The RFP, that process is done and over with. So if there is any motion that can be done, it would have to be a motion to amend the just approved and executed contract. But there can be no amendment to the RFP legally. There can't be. It is not a possibility. So I think that's clarification that has to be made first. And then I think
Okay.
the other issue that has to be discussed is if we do make this change to the contract that we just finalized and was approved by the board, will that change constitute a cardinal change, which would put which would put the agency in jeopardy of some sort of litigation challenge?
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Question.
Yes, sir. Dr. Morris.
Attorney, you said would put the board in some kind of litigation challenge. Are you insinuating that we cannot change a contract?
No, I mean, you can change a contract, but when you make a cardinal change and when you make a cardinal change this close in time to having executed a contract, all of the parties that submitted proposals for this RFP relied on the language and the appendices to the RFP. So there is a possibility that if we now change this limit, someone could say, well, if I had known that that was the case, I might have submitted a proposal. And so I'm not saying it's likely, I'm saying it gives rise to the possibility of there being some sort of a challenge based on fairness. But you can change a contract, you just can't, I think when it comes down to a cardinal change, that's going beyond just a small change or amendment to a contract.
It should be noted that
I guess my other issue would be is that the vendor that we have executed the contract with is in compliance with this requirement. So I'm not exactly sure why this change would be needed.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
When this motion was made, this contract hadn't been signed.
Right.
But I think the board had reviewed the contract at that point and nothing changed in the contract.
The contract hadn't been signed and hadn't been reviewed by the board, and that we were told that during the board meeting that the contract had been signed, which we found out the very next day that it hadn't. My
board-
motion to
the board-
change that
The
was
board had, Mr. Fergus,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
the board had reviewed the contract. The contract, nothing in the contract changed since the board authorized Mr. Ando to go forward with completing negotiations and executing the contract. So I'm assuming that when it was given to everybody, that everybody reviewed it, and that's what was voted on at the meeting.
Mr.
Hey,
Chair.
if I can interject, I think part of the problem, Pam, is you're conflating the contract and the RFP. Okay, so what you're saying, if I understand what you're saying, is because the contract was not signed, but the RFP had been approved by the board. While what was said in the board meeting was not accurate, it would have caused us to change the RFP. Mr. Fergus's motion would have changed the RFP, which we would have had to put the whole contract back out, correct?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying, what I was saying is that when we brought the contract to the board, and I can't remember what the date of that meeting was.
May 15th.
Okay, May 15th. And the board then voted and authorized Mr. Ando to go forward based on the review of that specific document and with the execution of the contract. And I guess what I'm saying is nothing in that document changed since the board looked at it. That was not authorized in the meeting.
Attorney Baker, this is Robert Morris. It's my understanding that at one point you said that you weren't even aware that managers had to have 8 years experience and had to work supervising 150 employees. That was added later on. And if my recollection, you were not aware of that.
Well, I never said that. I don't recall ever saying that, Dr. Morris. What I will say is that language was in the sample contract that went out with the RFP. It was one of the appendices to the RFP. So that language was in the sample contract. That specific language is not in the actual RFP. But
yes, but that's what I'm alluding to, the RFP.
Right. But Mr. Ando provided the contract well, let me not say that. John, did you provide the contract to the board members?
Yes, when we provided the RFP and the ad hoc committee reviewed it, it was in there through the ad hoc committee, it was in there through the board adoption, and then it was in there again for the RFP committee to release it. So the language has always been there.
I beg to differ with that, and I chaired the ad hoc committee, and it wasn't in there. Now, we ended the ad hoc meetings, and Miss Baker, you were present, and John said the rest of that stuff will be boilerplate, and it will be added. Even Argea didn't see it. We thought all the regulations were done when we stopped meeting. But if you got to 1,800 pages, that means it was a whole lot added that board members didn't see. Now I want to ask, did you see the final product before it went out?
Are you talking about the contract that was recently signed?
Yes.
Yes, I can't
Did
tell
you
you
see
how
the
many.
final RFP before it went out?
I think we've rehashed this. When the version of the RFP that I saw that went out was not the same one that actually went out, because the version that I saw did not have that 5% cap in it.
I'm not talking about that. The union employees, just a right to work state. Did you see those union requirements going out in the RFP?
Okay, I think we're confusing two things. The union requirement is not in the RFP document itself. That union requirement was in appendices which contained a sample contract. So yes, it was in that sample contract, but was it in the language of the RFP? No, it was in an attachment to the RFP. And yes, I did see all of the attachments to the RFP.
But
I would-
Attorney Baker, the committee did not see that piece that was attached to the RFP.
Well, I think Mr. Ando would have to address whether or not he provided that to the committee. I know it was provided to me. I mean, it was provided to me. So I would assume that whatever I was provided was also provided to the committee.
Yes, I believe that we did provide the full RFP to the committee. And I do recall some of the board members calling me, asking questions about the multiple pages that was in that draft RFP.
John, do you have the date of when that was?
Yeah, I'm pulling that up right now, actually.
So guys, if y'all can hold on a second, let's see if we can find the email, because I usually keep everything I'm sent.
Mr. Chairman Huggins.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, but I had troubles with my phone trying to dial in again. Would you please acknowledge who is on the call? Will you please do a roll call, please?
So it's the executive committee. So we have Anderson, Morris, Smith, Leaks, and Burgess. From the staff, we have Paige and John. And then from legal, we have Franny, Rick, and Pam Baker.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And you're welcome to listen in, so as is any board member.
Mr. Chairman, while John is looking for that date, could I ask a question? I'm wondering, since the other side, the new contracting company has agreed to the provision of the 150 union employees as one of the qualifications for the general manager, what is the concern or the problem with leaving that language in the contract?
Yeah, Mr. Burgess, Dr. Morris, y'all want to address that?
Well, Ms. Attorney Heiser, my concern is that's a robust number. 8 years and 150 union employees. As I've said before, when our panel, and you were a part of it, Attorney Heiser, no, I'm sorry, you were not. When our panel interviewed the executive director, we discussed Mr. Andor information that he submitted to us, and at no point did we have any document to say that he was ED prior to coming to Columbia. Now, that being the case, 150 union employees and 8 years experience, that's quite a bit. And I have a concern about that.
But if the current vendor satisfies that, how is it harmful to the comment?
Mr. Chair, the concerns I have with is we have.
Hold on. Hey, Mr. Burgess, why don't you let Dr. Morris? Let's let him run out his.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
My concern is that that is quite a bit. We would have more candidates if we had a lesser number. So that's where I'm coming from, Attorney Baker.
And I guess
Dr. Morris, so to follow up on what you're saying, when you say more candidates, you mean more candidates for the key personnel, or more candidates to respond to the RFP?
No, not to respond to the RFP. More candidates for the managerial jobs.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment on that?
No, John, I want you to find where you sent out to the board as a whole that RFP with that amendment. And yeah, the draft the RFP that went out. I want to see it, and I want to see the attachment, because that's basically what we need to settle that question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
May
may I?
find it.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Andy, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry, Andy. Let me get back to you. Mr. Burgess
I'm
had.
sorry.
Yes,
Go ahead, Mr. Burgess. Sorry about that.
my concern is we have only 87 buses. So to put a requirement of 150 union employees in a right-to-work state, that means some employees have been employed at the transit facility ever since I've been on the board. So to automatically write all the local employees out, I think it's totally unfair.
Okay. So, and that, I get that, but now I think that more than the drivers are unionized. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the machinists are as well. So what's our total union?
Yeah, we have a total of 160 bus operators here at the Commons, and they're all unionized.
And how many?
The language says 150 bus route unionized.
That's correct. They're all unionized, and we have a total of 160 bus operators between fixed route and paratransit.
And John, what about, aren't the machinists unionized as well?
The mechanics and the utility workers are also union. So about 75% of the workforce is unionized.
So how many union members do we have on our workforce, roughly?
Close to 200.
Okay.
Not the language in the RFP. The language in the RFP says requirement of 150 or more full-time equivalent bus operators in a union environment within the past 8 years.
Incorrect. And we have 160 bus operators that are union.
Mr. Chair, may I?
So basically, anybody that works for us or anybody that works for TransDev currently would be qualified.
That is correct.
So, yeah. So Andy, go ahead.
Well, this discussion has been kind of directed where I wanted to go anyway, which is the substantive question of whether that requirement is reasonable. And so we currently have 160 unionized drivers, and we're saying, hey, we want somebody who's had experience with 150 for 8 years, or at least 8 years experience. It seems quite reasonable to me, and it's really kind of our duty as board members to make sure the contractor puts somebody in place that's qualified. I don't have a problem at all with the substance of that provision of the contract. And I think we would want the contractor to get the best people in there that we can. I think that's our fiduciary responsibility, is to make sure they do that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Lee.
I'm just wondering what's the importance of 150 unionized employee bus drivers? Suppose somebody came from a shop that where only half the bus drivers were unionized, and that might come out to be, say, 75, 90. Then that person would be unqualified, right?
Yes.
That's how
Huh?
Yeah, that's what that sounds like.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering why these people have to be, why you have to say 150? Why you couldn't say something less than that? Because lots of shops, especially in South Carolina, I don't think everybody's a member of the union. And this person might be a great person for the position, but that one requirement would knock him out.
The reason why we put the number that we did, because we talked about this on November 20th and November 25th with the Transit Ad Hoc RFP Committee, and we talked about, we've had 5 general managers at the Comet since 2015 that have not had experience in running this operation. So we suggested to the committee that we need to put a specific qualifier in on how can we ensure we get general managers that can run a system this size. And I provided, which is shown in your packet, sample language from Capital Metro that has exactly the similar thing that we talked about. And that is on page 41. And the committee members agreed that that made sense. So that's why staff put in that 150 requirement, because we have 160 bus operators. And we also said for the maintenance manager that you need to have at least 80 buses, because we have 87 buses. So that is of similar size.
John, hold on one second, John. Hold on one second, John. Have you found where the board approved the RFP with that appendix? Where is that email?
That's what I'm searching right now for. I have over.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to look in the December timeframe right now.
Okay. I'm sorry, Colonel Leaks, I cut you off.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr.
Burgess. My only thing, I think the big the problem here, John and fellow board members, is that it's not so how many drivers. I agree, 150 drivers. That's fine, but the problem is having to be unionized, and since everybody doesn't have to be unionized, and you can still have 150 drivers. I've said that once, so that's my point. Why do we have to have that unionized environment?
The reason why is because under federal law, because we have a union agreement here, you want to ensure you have a general manager that knows how to negotiate union agreements. We can't bypass the unionization of this facility because the union has been in place since 1973.
This is right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so in other words, we've got to have somebody with the experience working with unions. I mean, whether it's a right to work state or not, under federal law, we have a union. We have to keep the union unless they choose to decertify. The question is, are we going to hire key personnel who are qualified to manage a unionized staff like that, of that size? Which I agree with Andy. That seems entirely reasonable to me that you would want to have that experience, because it's very different than hiring it. And whether if we were not unionized, we wouldn't need the requirement. But it's very different to manage a unionized versus a non-unionized staff. And Ms. Burgess, you're well aware of that, having served in the Postal Service for many years as a manager. So you know it's a different set of work rules than it would be like if you were at Collier's, where it's not unionized. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, that's all right. My question again is, well, if that's the case that I'm hearing, has rep there been notified that our managers aren't qualified? That doesn't take but a statement.
Okay. In the RFP process, how it works is we ask them to name 4 key managers. So each of the bidders were supposed to pick 4 people to be part of their bid. So RATP Dev could have reached out to TransDev managers to ask the question. I'm not sure if they did or not, but it's at their discretion on who they want to pick to present to the agency.
Mr. Chair, may I?
That didn't answer my question.
Hold on.
That didn't answer my question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, well, I mean,
getting roundabout answers rather than an answer to my question.
No, I don't know if they, to answer your question directly, I do not know if they talked to the Transdev managers when they were writing this RFP back in January.
Does that answer it, Ms. Burgess?
No, I'm asking,
Well,
just based on what he said about the union and our managers that we have locally, as he mentioned to Rap there, that our managers locally are qualified based on what was put in the RFP. Let's take a simple answer.
Okay, then yes, RATP Dev is aware that there's
Can
people.
you send the board members a copy of that correspondence?
I do not have it in writing. It was talked about during the transition meeting.
Well, they're still present, so can you get a copy to them and let them know that? They are in Columbia.
Yeah, and they're actually starting the hiring process now, and they are talking to.
Can you send them that letter and send board members a copy of that correspondence that our managers locally meet the union requirement?
So you want me to email RATP Dev to say?
I don't want to email thing. I said, can you give?
Hold on. Hey, hold on, everybody. I want to ask, because we're stepping into somebody, Rick, I want Rick Morgan to advise us on whether that's appropriate for John to do that, because we're now interfering in, or we are, I don't know if that's appropriate or not. So I want legal counsel to tell us before we ask John to do something that might get us in trouble.
What's the specific question again? I want to make sure I understand the specific question that's being asked.
Rick, Mr. Fergus would like John to send a letter to RAPT indicating that, would you say specific people or just in general, that there are people qualified at Transdev who meet?
Well, he made a general statement that our managers meet the union requirement, so he can just send a general statement, not individual, that our managers meet the union requirement.
So would that be appropriate, Rick, to say we believe we have staff that meet that requirement and not name staff?
A general statement, as Mr. Fergus just noted, if I understood it correctly, would certainly be acceptable. It would not be interfering, but to say that the current staff would meet the requirements for that union component.
So Rick, could you and John draft something that would be copacetic, and once you're comfortable with it, circulate it to RAPDev and to the board?
I'd be happy to do that. John, why don't you take a first shot at the draft and send it to me?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Huggins.
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I have listened to this conversation, and what I demise more than anything else is that we have individuals who've been on the staff for 30 years or less than 30 years. And for them not to be in the situation where they can't even apply for a job, because we're growing the system in a different kind of way, and they know the system. So I concur with Mr. Fergus to give them an opportunity at least to interview.
Yeah. Okay. So Andy, you were trying to say something.
Well, I guess I was trying to figure out what the issue is. It sounds like it may be more narrow than I think, because at first I thought that we wanted a local option for people in South Carolina. So, because the conversation was around the fact that South Carolina is a right-to-work state, and people in South Carolina would not necessarily have as much experience with the unions. But now what I think I'm hearing is that we want people who are at our agency. So the whole union question is irrelevant because we have a union. My first question was, do Charleston and Greenville have unions for their transit operators? And
Greenville does not because they're city employees, but Charleston does.
Okay, so in theory, Greenville people could not apply for this job because of this provision in the contract. But Charleston people could. As well as our,
in
as
theory,
well as
yeah.
our own. As well as our own. So, okay, but it sounds to me like it's more narrow than just South Carolina, that we're really interested in our own folks in-house. Do we know what is RapDev doing? Are they even,
Yeah, right now they're specifically interviewing people, telling people to apply, and they're going through the process to staff up the organization. The new RFP has additional positions that are more than what TransDev has, so there's actually opportunity for people that are like drivers to move up. And they've posted all those positions and have started the process as of last week.
and for the general manager position, are they posting that and interviewing for it?
They've already proposed somebody for the general manager position.
And that's just the way the procurement works. We asked them to do that, right?
That's correct. All the bidders were supposed to provide a general manager, an assistant general manager, a maintenance manager, and a paratransit manager.
As part of the RFP. So they were supposed to
As
tell
part of
us
the
that.
RFP.
They were supposed to tell us that weeks ago.
Correct.
So there's no way for them to do that, to tell us to satisfy the requirements of our RFP, to tell us who they're going to put in these key positions, and then turn around and interview our own people. There's no possible way they could have done that, even without this 150 bus driver and a unionized operator environment provision. I mean, it just would not have been feasible because we asked them beforehand to tell us who they were going to put in the position. So
Absolutely right.
And so we're kind of
And Mr. Chair Huggins.
Yeah. And let Andy finish, please.
Well, what I'm saying is that we're putting them in an impossible position if we come back to them now and say, never mind about those people that you interviewed for this position and that you who were prepared to move across the country or whatever to Columbia, never mind, we want you to consider these other people now. It's a really,
no, we're not.
I mean, it's just am I wrong about that? We asked.
Well,
yes.
So I think, no, I don't think so because, I think you're wrong in the sense that everybody who worked at TransDev knew TransDev was not bidding, which means they knew they didn't have jobs. So if I were RAPT, I would definitely scour through the people who you knew were no longer going to be TransDev, who would lose their job at the end of the contract, and to go through that pool first and reach out. RAPT or any of the other vendors could have gone through the existing people at TransDev or TCS and said, hey, I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you, and include them in their bid. And when they say
actually, Mr. Anderson, for reference.
I got the floor. I have the floor.
Hold on, Derek. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on, Derek. John, finish. Answer. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So no, because we didn't know TransDev wasn't going to bid until March 5th when they sent a letter when we started receiving proposals. So my understanding was TransDev told their employees they were going to submit a bid, and that they were prepared to present those employees as they are here in their proposal. Then on March 5th, we got a letter saying they're going to submit no bid. So RATP Dev, MV, Coach USA, and National Express would have not known to come start talking to the people here about being proposed in their proposal.
Okay, so Andy is, hold on. So Andy is correct then with what he's saying.
That's correct. And that's how it's done in the transit industry.
And so my fear, just to interject.
And please ask Andy to restate. Please ask Andy to restate, please.
Okay, Andy, restate it.
Well, what I was saying is that in the RFP, we told all of the potential contractors, those who were bidding as part of the RFP, that we wanted them to name their key personnel. And they did so not knowing whether Transdev was going to bid or not. It sounds like many of them had already probably submitted their RFP response without knowing whether Transdev was going to bid. So they named people, and then now it sounds like we're wanting to go back to them and say, those people you named, we don't want you to. It just seems like my concern here. This is my real concern here is that we have the real potential to get off on a really bad foot with a brand new contractor. I mean, we just went through a difficult procurement and divorce with an existing contractor, and I really fear that they're going to look at this and say, you're just jerking us around. And that, I'm not terribly interested in more of that, frankly.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chair,
Derek.
can I ask the board member?
Yeah.
I want him to expound a little bit more on that because I need to understand what he's saying. I lost it a little bit. So tell me again, Mr. Smith.
Well, so a lot of it's just I think a question of timeline. So we issued an RFP, and in it we said, please name your key personnel. Tell us who you would put in these roles. And I think we even held them, if I remember correctly, we said that we expect you to keep these people in this position for a certain amount of time.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
In the RFP, we said that. And now if we come back after people have responded, we didn't know whether or not Transdev was going to respond and name their own people. After we told all the contractors to do that, now we're going to say, never mind. We don't want you to, those people you named and that you said were going to be coming to Columbia if we got the contract, and essentially gave a two-year agreement to us to keep people in key positions. Never mind, we don't want that anymore. We want you to consider more broadly. I guess
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
And if-
Mr. Fergus, please, I really would like for Mr. Smith to finish his concept on what he's saying, really. And I will walk away from the floor. I will.
And Derek,
But I just want Mr. Smith to finish what his thoughts are.
and Mr. Huggins, this is Ms. Baker. To add on to what Mr. Smith is saying is, everyone who submitted a proposal relied on what the requirements were in that RFP, which asked them to identify those people. And not only that, but there were points assigned as to scoring them as to how they answered that question.
So
Mr. Chair.
where are you going with that, Mr. Speaker? Yeah. Who's
Mr.
that?
Chair.
To finish
Yes, sir.
Pam's comment, if I could, that you shouldn't change the rules now after the game has been completed. I mean, being
Right.
the procurement process, the solicitation has been concluded, and to change the rules now has the potential to, at a minimum, get off to a bad start with the new contractor. Worse, as Pam said, not likely, but could result in a legal challenge.
Okay.
So,
Derek, are you
I'm not finished. I just want to ask a question to Baker and Heiser. Will you please tell me where we are at this point on how we need to move forward, please?
Well, I think that we are moving forward. We have a executed contract. We're in the transition. There's really nothing else to do. I'm not exactly sure the changing the language in, pursuant to this motion. I don't see how it helps us. It seems like we would want to have the highest standards and the most qualified people.
Derek, are you good?
Yeah, I'm table. I'm good.
Okay, Mr.
There
Burns?
might be some additional advice,
Oh.
Mr. Chair. There might be some additional
Ma'am?
advice that we would give, but I don't think we should do it in open session. I think it would be legal advice subject to the attorney-client privilege.
Okay, thank you. So can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I have a, Mr. Chair, I have a question
Mr. Chair.
on the same thing we're discussing.
Okay.
I want clarity on it. I need clarity
Okay,
on it.
Okay, go ahead, Franny. We'll
On
come back to
the
executive
bus
session.
operators, do we have locally 150 bus operators? And has any local manager been notified that they aren't qualified based on the union item in the contract?
No.
Who you
No
asking?
manager has been told that they're not qualified to apply for a job at RATP Dep.
That's not my question. My question is, any manager been told that they aren't qualified based on the union requirement in the contract?
Nobody has talked to any manager at Transdev to say they are not qualified, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
My question was being disqualified based on the union requirement in the contract. That's a simple
Nobody
question.
has told anybody at Transdev or employees that they're disqualified. Everybody downstairs is eligible to apply to work at RATP Dep.
You're not answering my question, John. I said, has any manager been disqualified based on the union requirement in the contract?
No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Dr. Moore.
let me share, and Mr. Smith, I certainly respect your comments. You had some great comments, but I want you to know, when we had to interview and gave Transdev a contract, all of those 5 companies brought individuals who we thought that they were going to hire to be a part of their panel. And that didn't turn out to be the case. We know with RapDev, although they say that they are going to hire certain people, that is not going to be the case. I asked a representative from RapDev last week whether or not they're going to hire all the individuals who they said they were going to hire, and they said to me, no, we are not going to hire all those individuals who came to the panel discussion and we had indicated that we were going to hire. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay.
Mr.
So,
Chair. Mr.
yes,
Chair,
sir, Ms. Burgess.
on all these
Yes, sir.
key people, it's a step in there that we're leaving out, because I've never seen a resume of a key employee. I'm on the service committee, and that's where our regulations say it should go. So I don't know where all these people are coming from that they're rating qualified.
Right. As I told you before, the intent is once they had the 4 that were put in the RFP. Hold on one second. Okay. The 4 that were in the RFP, I believe John rejected some or all of them as the contracting officer. And RATP provided 4 more, and what Colonel Leak and John agreed to bring the 4 new candidates and the people who were rejected to the service committee. I think at the next service meeting, which I'm not sure when you guys had that scheduled, but it was not before yesterday because they didn't expect to have everybody named before yesterday.
But we, if you look at our bylaws, we changed the bylaws and took the ED out of that qualification part of it. But maybe that's another
but
issue.
Yeah, it's a different issue because we didn't take which is why the intent of that's why we agreed to do that way. But the contracting officer, the policy that we passed didn't address the contracting officer. It only addressed, once we had a contract in place, how things would go going forward. So, in any case.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion to go into executive session?
Yeah, Franny, since we have a motion and a
point of
second
order.
on the table.
Point of order, Mr. He can only listen in. He can't vote, so he can't put us in the executive session.
Who was that?
Yeah, Derek, you can't make a motion to go into executive session because you're not part of the executive committee.
All right, Mr. Fergus.
Okay,
But
it's
reference to Colonel Leak. Maybe he should clarify that if he's still there.
I'm sorry.
I'm still here.
He made reference to Mr. Leak agreeing to something.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, Colonel Leak.
What part is that about the procedure?
About bringing we had talked about John would bring the rejected candidates and the ones that RAPP selected to the service committee as soon as they were all named.
We agreed to bring these people, their resumes, before the service committee because the way this procedure is supposed to work is John is the executive director is supposed. Can you hear me? Executive director is supposed to get the resumes, bring them to the service committee, and then we'll vet them, look at them together, and send them on to the full board for approval. That's what we're supposed to do.
But that's not what the chair is saying. Maybe the chair should restate what he's saying you and John agreed to.
Well, we agreed the other day that he would bring the old resumes, the ones that have been rejected, and as well as the ones that are being proposed now to the executive.
When you say the other day.
Yeah, we said it sometime last week or sometime that would be the procedure based on the regulation, based on the way it's written, and we voted on it the other day that would be the procedure that we'd use.
So they're going to get reviewed by the service committee, Ms. Fergus.
Right.
Yeah, it's going, but we don't have a regulation say you can reject people and hire accept people, and we send it to service committee. That's not in our regulation.
No. Before he hires or reject, it has to come to us first. That's the understanding.
So we're kind of getting our wheels going here. We have a motion and a second. What do we want to do, guys? And if I understand it, the motion would need to be modified. If you want to change it, we would need to modify it. You need to modify your motion to amend the contract requirement, not the RFP.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could insert, I think that the executive committee, whatever decision y'all make, would go to the full board. I don't think that the executive committee vote changes the contract. So it would be, you'd be voting to make a recommendation to the full board.
Thank you. And that, but first, Ms. Burgess would need to modify it or withdraw his existing motion.
But let me ask you something. If this is a executive committee action, we sending it back to the full board, why did we ever send it from the board? It's the same people voting on it 3 times.
Because you made it in the motion period, and it was not on the agenda of the last board meeting, and you can't make, under the FOIA law, you cannot make a motion that is not on the agenda. You can make a motion, but all you can do is send it to a committee or send it to the board at the next meeting, but we can't take action on anything that's not on the agenda.
Well, maybe Ms. Heiser can answer this. So in essence, it's no authority with the executive committee.
I mean, the executive committee has some authority, but I don't think the executive committee in this instance has the authority to amend the contractor operator contract. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of the issues that specifically says the executive committee can't make a big decision like that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. Okay. Well, do we have any motions to get us out of this? Okay.
I'm
Okay.
on the executive session.
Okay. I have a motion to go into executive section. Can I get a second?
A second.
Okay, I have a second. And then, Dr. Morris, is this in relationship to item 4?
This is in relationship to going into executive session. Going into executive session.
Okay, but do we need to name what we're talking about in executive session,
So,
Danny?
this meeting was emergency meeting to discuss a personnel action.
Okay, I'm just procedurally trying to figure out, are we done with item 4, which is the, sorry, I opened the wrong document. Are we done with item 5, which was which was the motion, matter 6, which was the RFP change? Are we done with that or not?
All those questions, I guess John had sent all those questions that was asked in the discussion sometime today.
Okay, so what are we going to an executive session to discuss? Is it legal contractual personnel?
That's correct.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, so motion to go into executive
And Mr. Chair, legal counsel will be available, right? Legal counsel will be available.
They will be they were going to go on the call. So, and
okay.
I believe,
Thank you.
Franny, what is the procedure with respect to non-executive committee members? Are they allowed to be in an executive session meeting?
I think board members can.
Okay.
And I would note for the recording that you're going into executive session for the discussion of an employee. So it's not just a general contractual.
Okay. So I have a motion, and I have a second. Any further discussion?
Well, wait. Attorney Heiser, it's not so much about an employee. It's about how we want to move forward on how we transition. So it's not an employee on my sample.
That's not why we.
Yeah, that's on the agenda, Derek, as a discussion of an employee. So, okay.
I cannot discuss an employee.
Okay, that's fine. I have a motion and a second. So any further discussion? Okay, barring none, vote your position by saying yay or nay when I read your name. Anderson, yes. Morris?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Is that yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Lee?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go into executive session. I'm going to ask attorneys Heiser, Baker, and and Rick to stay on the phone. And then any board members can drop out. John, let us know when you're out. I'll text you when you can come back in, okay?
Sounds good. We're shutting off the tape right now. I found the email and I'm sending it to you guys now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Franny is, okay.
Yeah, sit down. Both going now.
Okay. John out of the room? John and Steph out of the room?
Yep, we're out.
Okay.
All right, okay, we're out.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It was,
Could I just make a statement, Mr. Fergus, very quick?